All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the RESO Remote Digital Tech Summit. Today, we'll be talking in this presentation about the Universal Property ID and a real-world integration between CRMLS and CRS. I'm Mark Bessett. I'm the Workgroup Chair, and I work at CRMLS. I'm in charge of their technology out there. I've been doing software engineering for a while and got roped into this UPI Workgroup Chair job a few years ago by some friends of mine on the RESO board. Who, I don't know if you want to call them friends at this point in time because of all the work that they looped me into, but we have fun. And we also have Matt Casey here. You guys might have seen me on the stage a lot of times with Matt. Matt, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. As you can see on the slide, my name is Matt Casey with CRS Data. We do property record services to MLSs and other industries throughout the U.S. Currently serving as president and CEO. And similar to Mark, I've been involved with RESO for several years. Not quite as involved in Mark, but he and I have had an opportunity to work together on several of these. And as you can see from our respected Zoom backgrounds, Mark's a very smart rocket scientist. He's on the moon. I elected to come to you from a basketball arena, so I'm not sure what that says about my intelligence, but there it is.
Yeah, Matt's just a little more kicked back, but I have volunteered him into so many of these presentations, and he's been gracious enough to help out, and he works very closely with me on the UPI work group, and pretty soon he'll be the co-chair, right, Matt?
Sure.
Okay, let's get started. So just as a quick reminder of where everybody's at, I don't know if everybody knows what the UPI is, the Universal Property Identifier, but it's a serial number for properties that we have come up with in the UPI work group. Works all across the United States fairly well, and it's actually being adopted internationally by several countries in the EU, and there's interest from Canada. So we're trying to get on the same page with a lot of groups for property data. It's the idea for this property serial number is that you can link a lot of things together, a lot of different disparate property information, where you might have one group or one company or one vendor that's really good at a certain type of property record. Maybe insurance claims, it could be deeds, it could be really anything that has to do with a property. And we can link those together with this reference kind of ID. That's what we call the UPI. It's also currently a required field in the data dictionary. So there's actually two fields in the data dictionary. One is for the property itself. That's the sort of physical, legal property. And then there's a subproperty identifier, which we're not going to talk too much about in this presentation, but that will identify pieces of property that are underneath an otherwise taxable legal entry. So something like a stock cooperative, things like of that nature. There's a link on the screen you can see, and it'll take you right to the spec that's for the UPI that we currently have defined. So why is CRMLS interested in doing a UPI integration to start with? Right now, the biggest problem for any MLS really is deduplication, verification of a listing being kind of quote unquote real. There's a lot of work that we do that's strictly on that behalf, and the UPI does a really good job of helping us out with that. At CRMLS, we actually are putting together software that allows members to enter listings, that is, from a disparate number of listing software. So Matrix, Flex, Paragon. We want to allow our members to enter their listings into whatever software they feel comfortable with, whatever software their broker maybe feels comfortable with. And then we also want to enable other listing systems that are just front end only, what we call front end only. That means they just enter a listing and they can put it into our system. And Zillow's doing that right now with Bridge Interactive. That's going pretty well. Great group of guys, by the way, if anyone wants to work with those guys. I recommend that. We also have W&R Studios, and they're doing some stuff for us as well. And it's turning into quite the ecosystem. So the bigger that ecosystem gets, the more important it is for us to be able to identify things like duplicates, or maybe there's an entry from a data share perspective. We have a lot of data shares as well. We have over 40 member boards at CRMLS, so it's pretty expansive. And these types of business problems, the risks of data duplication, the need for auto population, and having a coherent data or a coherent data populate or auto population is becoming a bigger and bigger problem space for us to solve. One system such as Flex might have configured one auto population source for a particular AOR, but another group might be using Matrix and using CoreLogic, and someone might be using Paragon and using CRS auto population. So we want to enable all those models, but at the same time, internally, we want to be able to know that we can still be coherent with all the systems using the UPI, which is really what it's designed for. So here's the challenges that we have for integration, and one of the main reasons that I contacted Matt to start with was we have a need to sort of discover the UPIs for existing properties using the standard that we built. Now, some MLSs, I've worked with some MLSs in the past where they maintained all of the UPIs themselves, and they have a really good data warehouse on properties. So that's when I was working at ARMLS, and they have a great essentially property database. It's very deep, and since it's the backyard there, they can control that, and they can utilize their own UPI source. At CRMLS, not so much. It's pretty wide, it's pretty disparate. So we partner up with companies like CRS or CoreLogic, excuse me, and that's what we use for our auto population. We have over 9 million listing records. There's a various age and quality of what we have today, our existing data set, and this integration that we're doing with CRS's data is all about evaluating how good that data is today and where are there holes and where there are not holes. We have a need to do a validation with our derived UPIs, what we think is the UPI, and what CRS says is the UPI. And if we're all following the same standard, they should be pretty close. So, Matt, you want to talk about the objective here?
Sure. So as Mark indicated on the previous slide, there's numerous reasons for California Regional, and for that matter, any MLS to leverage the UPI more into their auto pop and their listing maintenance. So specifically what we started from the historical, I kind of look at it as there's the bulk research or bulk matching, and then where we want to go, or more accurately, where California Regional wants to go moving forward. So the objective for this presentation and the work that went into it was, California Regional provided us with a little over 9 million records, and then, as Mark said, we took that information, did some matching, and tried to figure out where we had solid matches, and more importantly, when we didn't, were we able to leverage other parts of the property to provide back to California Regional a UPI.
So this is just kind of how we started, what we had to begin with. As Matt mentioned, we had the 9 million records. These were auto-populated in some cases. Some cases, the users, members just entered these things. We wanted to validate the UPI based on the normal pieces of it, which are the state, county, and parcel, with the postal address for any parts of ambiguity. We wanted to validate what we thought was the UPI based on that data, and then again what CRS came up with. And what we'll show you here in a few minutes, all the data that we gave them, by the way, was this listing ID, state, county, APN address, and what we had as a UPI. And then they gave us what they thought after they went through their data set, and this is what their results were.
Okay, so as Mark mentioned, you know, it started out with 9 million records, and so not to overstate it, but you know, it's pretty historical data set, and some of that information was auto-populated, so pretty robust. Others may not have been auto-populated at all, so missing certain components. So our first pass was we were just looking, let's match the property to the listing. You know, no evaluation of UPI at that point. So a little higher than 91%, pretty good match rate, especially for those two data sets. The subset of that, we said, okay, for these records, which one does the derived UPI from CRS and the derived UPI for CRMLS, that gets a little hard to say over and over, what is that match rate? And we're close to 80% there. So that's not bad at all out of the gate. Then of the 20% that weren't, that were matched, but the UPIs, there was a disconnect, we were able to, for a little over 1 million records, about almost 12%, we were able to say, okay, this is a match record. California Regional, you currently don't have a UPI. We could provide that, or there's a difference between the UPIs. And so we're going to, for this exercise, default and say, okay, well, CRS is the correct one. And then there was about 9% where there was just not enough information between what California Regional provided to facilitate a good match and to provide that UPI. And you know, we did this fairly quickly in order to be able to make the presentation today. And then part of the larger exercise that Mark and I are working through is really digging deeper. So, you know, of those 800,000 records, is that a byproduct of, you know, there was not enough information on the listing? Was there inaccurate information on the listing? So doing some of that research. I'm personally curious for the ones where we had a match, but there was a different UPI. Want to go back and look at stats. You know, is there a high percentage in a particular county, for instance? That may be a byproduct of the way that their system is formatting the parcel ID, which is obviously a core component of the UPI, versus how we are. So we might be able to identify some systematic things that will be helpful, you know, just within California Regional's system in and of itself, to improve that UPI matching, so that when it is then used as intended to link different data sets, you'll get a much higher match rate. So Mark, unless there's anything else you want to add, that's kind of a very quick.
Yeah, so we expect that 9% is probably the older records. And as Matt pointed out, we're kind of still working this a little bit, and we're trying to identify more specifics on that. But otherwise, I was really happy with both the match rates that we had to start with and the value that CRS was able to bring by providing those UPI discoveries, if you will. So I was really impressed with these results so far. So yeah, that's basically the conclusion, is that I think it's an important step. We want to have CRS continue to evaluate the UPI and into what our listings are, the property records that we have. And the key here really is that we don't want to just do this instantaneous snapshot validation of records. Really what we're aiming for is something that happens in a more real-time basis. So I'll just share with you guys sort of a bigger picture of the vision we have at CRMLS from this property records perspective, or listings records perspectives. We have an authoritative MLS data space, and we might want to get, again, data from any application. And these are MLS applications, but it honestly could be any application. These applications tend to give us listing data that we want to have. So we have an application that may or may not go to an auto population, as you see right here on the screen. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but I'm circling it. Hopefully you can. We're going to grab that data when it comes in, and we will do a UPI validation on our own, because we don't know who's doing the initial auto population. We don't want to know who's doing that initial value or that additional auto population. That's for this application to worry about. This MLS system, they can worry about it. We don't want to know about it. We get the data, we're going to validate it on our own no matter what anyway. After that, in our pipeline here, we will also want to get data that comes out of the UPI registry, which is a different topic than what we're here for today. But at the end of the day, that's that's actually what we're going to do. So that's a follow-on that we won't be talking about here. That's kind of out of scope, but that gives you an idea of how this all fits together in our architecture. Some other resources that we just put together for you guys, so you can do some additional research. We have the Workgroup homepage, of course. Anyone that's in a RESO member, please come to the UPI Workgroup. We love to have more voices. We have reference code that's available that the Workgroup has contributed. So this is great stuff. If anyone wants to just use it, it's free to all the RESO members. It has MIT licensing. Here's CRS's website. If you'd like to go contact them about additional things you can use, or additional resources they might have to do some validation for you, or put together a process or API endpoint for you guys to do a validation of the UPI. And I also included the the UPI builder demo for the property identifier. That's something we built a while back, but I get a lot of questions for that, so someone can see that kind of in action. And it's a great way to visualize it. So just put those together. So if you have any questions or comments, you can put them into the chat that should be running while this presentation is going. And feel free to ask anything specific, and I can get back to you, or we can answer questions afterwards. So thank you very much. Glad to have you guys at the RESO remote.
Thanks, everybody.